Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. At UFC Vegas 80, Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green. We saw some horrific performances, and I'm going to give you my opinion on who needs to be cut from the UFC after their performance on this fight night card. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions, then I'm going to get into my actual list, saving last on the list for who I believe most needs to be cut from the organization. And there's a couple shockers sprinkled throughout this list. The last two cuts on this list, you're never going to see coming. Starting off with my first honorable mention, and this isn't even just one fighter, this is two fighters. I want to throw away the whole fight. Vanessa Demopoulos and Kanako Murata. Vanessa Demopoulos gets the win. She shouldn't have gotten the win. I thought Murata clearly won the second and third round, but I can understand a debate for maybe the second round for Demopoulos. In the first round, you can definitely give them Demopoulos. This was such a horrible fight. And you had Murata, who in the second round, and with her grappling and her ground and pound, if she wasn't trying to throw donkey punches like double hammer fist at the same time, she probably would have won the fight. In the third round, she was just throwing really good ground and pound shots. She would have done it in the second round. She could have easily won the second round. The judges wouldn't have been able to misconstrue it, but instead she's throwing these weird hammer fists in the second round. And then you have Vanessa Demopoulos, has no grappling. The striking is horrific. This fight was horrific to watch. It was disgusting to watch. It was disturbing to watch. And this is true bottom of the barrel level MMA fighters. They don't belong. I mean, I don't even know if they belong on an amateur show. That's how bad they are. How do they go and call themselves when, hey, what do you do for work? I'm a professional MMA fighter. I would not trust either one of those girls to win a street fight, let alone fighting in the UFC. And I know they're buried on the prelims, but still, horrific performances by both of them, super low level by both of them. I never want to see Demopoulos or Murata ever fight again. Moving up on my list to my next honorable mention, and this person almost made the list, but that is Alexander Hernandez. He lost to Bill Algeo, lost pretty much to 30-27 pretty cleanly. He did okay. He had some moments. He did get eye poke, supposedly. We didn't really get to see a good isolation replay, but supposedly got eye poked with the thumb. He put on an okay performance. It was a relatively exciting performance, but Alexander Hernandez just never lived up to potential that a lot of people thought he was going to get to. He's only 31 years old. That's the crazy part. He's still young, but he's lost 3 out of his last 4. Bill Algeo beat him up all 3 rounds, dropped him in the second round. He got a win over Jim Miller, but Jim Miller's on his way out. Fight before that gets finished by Billy Quarantillo. Fight before that got finished by Renato Moicano. Okay, he's got a win over Mike Breeden, but what does that really mean? I think Alexander Hernandez, I think his time is getting very close to being done in the UFC. That's why he's an honorable mention. I feel like maybe give him one more fight, give him one more opportunity, but he's very, very close to being done in the UFC and potentially being cut. He just can't compete, honestly. And I know there's a lot worse fighters, honestly, like Paddy Pimblett, I think is far worse than Alexander Hernandez. Maybe that's a matchup we'll see in the future. So I don't want to be too harsh on Hernandez. That's why I made him an honorable mention. He had a somewhat competitive fight against Bill Algeo, but I have no desire to see Alexander Hernandez. It seems like he's just taking a lot of damage. It seems like he's slowing down. It seems like his stamina hasn't improved all that much, and he's not improving all that much. I think it's almost time for him to be cut from the organization. Moving up on my list to my last honorable mention, and that is Bill Algeo. And you're probably thinking, oh, how the heck is Bill Algeo on this list? Bill Algeo beat Alexander Hernandez, fair enough. He looked actually good. He looked improved. This guy went on the mic in his post-fight speech and called out Kron Gracie. Kron Gracie, the butt scooter. Kron Gracie, the guy who drags his ass across the canvas like a dog drags its ass on the carpet. How do you get on the mic after a win over Alex Hernandez? And I know he called out some other people, but most of them were like some type of CEOs or stuff like that. I don't even remember exactly what he was saying. I know he called out Zuckerberg from Facebook. But you called out, the first name out of your mouth is Kron Gracie, who literally lost an embarrassing performance against Charles Jourdain in his last fight, lost to Cub Swanson in the last fight before that. The last time Gracie won a fight was 2019. That was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, and you just got a win over Alexander Hernandez on the main card of a fight night card. You're like, yeah, give me Kron Gracie. Embarrassing. He's an honorable mention. I like watching Bill Algeo fight, so he's an honorable mention. But anytime anyone ever calls out Kron Gracie, they deserve to be an honorable mention on a cuts list. Moving on to my actual list, starting off with my first cut, and that is Johnny Munoz Jr. He lost to Arichi Lang, lost via decision, had the first round. Grappling looked good in the first round, had a takedown, took the back, looked pretty good there. His striking is just garbage. I'm pretty sure in his last fight against Daniel Santos, he was dragging his ass on the canvas too. Now I'm just remembering that. And it's just like, he doesn't have any striking. He really does not have the capacity to strike on the feet with anyone. And, he's only 30 years old. He just relies far too much on his jiu-jitsu. He needs to go to ONE FC and he can drag his ass all around the canvas in some of those jiu-jitsu matches. This is MMA. He had no striking at all. He really had no answers in the second and third round. And the way he got bullied, I believe it was the beginning of the second round. Arichi Lang came out, started putting the pressure on him, and Johnny Munoz Jr. just fell to his back immediately. If you are closing your guard, and not only closing your guard, but putting a body triangle from the bottom, cut. Tear up your contract immediately. I never want to see you fight again. He did that multiple times in this fight. I'm pretty sure he did it in the Daniel Santos fight as well. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's lost 3 out of his last 4. I just don't think Johnny Munoz Jr. is UFC caliber at all, even for the low barrier of entry we now have. He just relies on his jiu-jitsu. That's it. That's all he relies on. And to see a body triangle from the bottom, you're doing a body triangle from the bottom. I know he had a decent first round, but it's just like his stamina isn't that good. His striking, is he going to the school of Juliana Pena striking class? Is he training with Juliana Pena and Juliana Miller? The striking is horrific. I don't even know if he hits a heavy bag, to be honest. You're a professional MMA fighter, and you have absolutely no striking. Cut him from the organization immediately. Moving up on my list, the next cut we have is Montana De La Rosa. And honestly, I thought about throwing in JJ Aldridge as well. This fight was just horrible. It was horrible. It was painful to watch. I mean, just thinking back now, I have PTSD. This fight was horrible. It was uneventful. The third round, Montana De La Rosa got beat up pretty badly. I honestly thought there was an argument to make that Montana De La Rosa could have got round 1 and 2. She definitely didn't get 3. But either way, I mean, this is such low level. Why is this in the UFC? She's 12-9. That's her record. Her overall pro MMA record is 12-9. That's embarrassing. And you look at her last 3 fights, she's lost all of her last 3 fights. So she hasn't won a fight since 2021. I mean, I tried to give her some slack. She lost to Macy Barber. Okay, Macy Barber's an okay fighter. She lost to Tatiana Suarez. Tatiana Suarez is kind of hyped up. People thinking maybe she's a future champion. She loses to JJ Aldridge and gets beat up badly in the third round. Doesn't even attempt to grapple. I thought she had an advantage in the grappling. Doesn't even attempt to grapple. I just don't know how we can keep her around anymore. 3-fight losing streak. JJ Aldridge doesn't even belong in the UFC. And now we're going to keep you in the UFC? I don't want to see it anymore. I'm tired of these horrible prelims with horrible women's MMA fights. And honestly, I never want to see Montana De La Rosa ever fight again. Please, MMA gods. I don't want to see it. Horrific, terrible. Striking is god-awful. Grappling, we didn't even really see it in this fight. But I don't want to see Montana De La Rosa ever fight again. Moving up on my list. Next on my list, I had a horrible time with the placement of this next fighter. Because next on the list, we have Mateus Mendoza. How many times? This guy's a relatively exciting fighter, so I kind of wanted to keep him around. But how many times are we going to see guys attack leg locks for 3 to 4 minutes straight only to inevitably get KO'd? Like, this guy was literally absorbing nasty ground and pound for minutes. And he said, you know what? Let me stay in this situation. I could not believe the level of fight IQ we had here. I talked about this all in my full post fight. If you want to check that out, I'll link it in the description. But Mendoza, what is he thinking? He's literally absorbing ground and pound. At one point, they're in like a 50-50 leg lock, heel hook position. He gets clipped with a left, and he went out, basically. He got flash KO'd. And then he decides, you know what? I'm going to stay in this position. I'm going to keep eating ground and pound. What was his corner yelling? His corner should have been yelling for him to get out of that situation. To get brutalized that badly by Nate Maness, I think you're due to get cut. I want to cut this guy a little bit of slack, but you can't just blindly hold on to a heel hook for no reason for literally like 3 minutes straight. And you get KO'd once, you get flash KO'd, you wake back up, and then you still do it. And eventually at that point, you're eating so much ground and pound, you don't know where you're at. Then finally Nate Maness escapes out and just brutalizes him. And a horrible referee stoppage, by the way. I think that was Chris Tione. Throw him on the list as well. He's not currently on the list. throw Chris Tione, if he was the person who stopped this fight, throw him on the list too, because Mendoza took some nasty ground and pound, but such a low fight IQ move to hold on to that leg lock nonstop. He needs to be cut from the organization. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He did lose to Javid Bashrat UFC debut, so I wanted to cut him a little bit of slack. No, that fight IQ is horrific. Moving up on the list, next on my list, we have Ricky Glenn. Ricky Glenn gets absolutely brutalized and slaughtered in the first round by Drew Dober. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. In his last fight before this, he got absolutely brutalized by Christos Giagos. Hasn't won a fight since 2021 when he beat Joaquim Silva. And he was getting destroyed early, okay? He was getting destroyed badly. He kind of pulled guard. Drew Dober decides to make the high fight IQ decision. Okay, I'm going to pull out of his guard. Starts to pull out of his guard. And you have Ricky Glenn digging deep into the glove of Drew Dober. At that point, I thought Ricky Glenn was Nursultan Ruzaboyev's coach, and the glove was Nursultan Ruzaboyev's ass. That's how deep Ricky Glenn's fingers were in Drew Dober's glove. Referee doesn't do anything about it. Cut that ref too. I don't remember who that was. Drew Dober eventually gets out of the situation, makes Ricky Glenn stand, and then slaughters him on the feet again and absolutely brutalizes him and finishes him. And I just don't think Ricky Glenn belongs in the UFC. He's 34 years old, on a 2-fight losing streak. I mean, when's the last time he's had a decent win? Never. He's never had a decent win. Maybe Dennis Bermudez back in 2018. He even lost to Kevin Aguilar. I don't even remember who that is off the top of my head. You know, that's back in 2018 as well. And he missed weight for that fight. So he has one fight. It's against Joaquim Silva. Now, in his defense, he did almost have a choke win over Grant Dawson, but that hasn't aged quite well either. So it's time for Ricky Glenn to be cut. He's cheating in the fight, which I absolutely hate people who grab gloves, grab the cage, do whatever they can to potentially cheat and get an advantage in a fight. And the fact that he's just holding on to that for 10 seconds before he finally lets it go, and he's on a 2-fight losing streak, and he's in his mid-30s, cut Ricky Glenn immediately. Moving up on my list, this is my second to last cut on the list. And this is actually going to be one of the more shocking cuts on the list. Because not only are you not going to be expecting this fighter to be on the list, they didn't even fight at UFC Vegas 80. They fought at Bellator 300. And I didn't even watch the fight in its entirety. I only saw the last 30 seconds or so. But the next cut is Kat Zingano. The way she fought Chris Cyborg, the way she was getting ate up on the feet, she shoots in on a takedown, doesn't even get clipped with anything, shoots in on a takedown, and then just rolls over and huddles up like she's trying to avoid some type of grenade blast. She just showed up for a check. She genuinely just showed up for a check, and she's 41 years old. Why is she even still fighting? The way she just turtled up, it's not like she got hurt by some big shot. She shot it on a takedown, it got stuffed, and she just said, you know what? Let me just huddle up. Let me just huddle up and pray the ref jumps in. It was a disgusting performance. It borderline looked rigged. I expected her to lose to Kat Zingano anyway, but I didn't expect her to pull out the, oh, let me play dead. Let me just lay on the ground and play dead. I mean, that's what she did. She came in for Bellator 300 to fight for a title at 41 years old. And she said, you know what? I'm just going to play dead like Court McGee did a couple fights ago. Embarrassing performance by Kat Zingano. She's 41 years old, and I know she's won her last few fights, but the Bellator competition in that division is horrible. Lee McCourt, I mean, garbage. Pam Sorensen, garbage. She's 41 years old. She shouldn't be fighting. She's clearly just showing up for paychecks. I hope Bellator cuts her immediately. What I saw, that finishing sequence was the closest I've seen to straight up just giving up. She quit immediately. She got her takedown stuffed. She said, please, referee, save me. Please save me. Let me just huddle up, try to not take any damage. I'm going to collect my check for this title fight. I'm going to get out of here. You know, I usually advocate, I think the fighters are underpaid. I hope she's only getting $250 in a funnel cake from the concession stand. That's what an embarrassing performance that Kat Zingano put on. Moving on to my last cut, and I'm wondering if anybody can guess this cut. Before I even get into it, comment down below, what do you believe will be the last cut? Pause the video and comment that down below. The last cut on my list is Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson got brutally KO'd by Bobby Green in the first round by a borderline jab. It was basically a left jab. You know, maybe you can call it a left straight. There was really no wind up. It was basically a left jab. And he fell down like he was KO'd, but he wasn't really KO'd. The referee gave him every opportunity to attempt to recover. He just turns over and gets beat up by Bobby Green, and then eventually the referee steps in. Now, I don't think he quit in the way Kat Zingano quit, but if this is the type of chin that he has, I want him gone from the organization. And if it was just this fight, if it was just this Bobby Green loss, I would probably not put him on the list, or maybe just put him as an honorable mention, considering he was on a decent win streak before this, dominated Demirs Magulov, dominated Mark Madsen, dominated Jarrett Gordon. Maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't make the list. But you go back to the win over Demirs Magulov. He gets on the mic afterwards and calls out the dead corpse of Tony Ferguson. The fight before that against Mark Madsen, gets on the mic and calls out the dead corpse of Tony Ferguson. So the last two fights, you've been calling out the dead corpse of Tony Ferguson. Then you get a main event against Bobby Green, who, it's basically a setup fight. You're ranked number 10. Bobby Green's unranked. This is supposed to be an easy win for Grant Dawson. And you get KO'd by a jab in the first round. Is that the first punch he's ever absorbed? Because his chin is horrific. And maybe, okay, Bobby Green just landed on the perfect spot, whatever, fair enough. He had ample opportunity to try to move and whatnot. And granted, I don't want to, focus on that too much because, okay, maybe he's just hurt badly, didn't know where he was, whatever. But the fact that you lost to Bobby Green, you get KO'd by a jab, and then on top of that, you compile that with the fact that you called out the dead corpse of Tony Ferguson in your last two fights after you won. And on top of that, Bobby Green fought Tony Ferguson in his last fight, and Bobby Green was losing the first round, and Tony Green was far more competitive than Grant Dawson up until, I believe it was an eye poke in the second round. Obviously, Tony Ferguson got finished in the third round, but the fact that dead corpse of Tony Ferguson that you've been begging for and pining for in the post-fight interviews was more competitive against Bobby Green than you are, a supposed top 10 fighter. Embarrassing. Honestly, I'm wondering if Grant Dawson still wants Tony Ferguson, so he threw this fight. Because he might get him now, honestly. The way Tony Ferguson's never going to retire. I think that may be what Grant Dawson was intending to do. He's like, I'm going to throw this fight against Bobby Green. I'm going to get KO'd by a jab like Dominic Reyes did against Ryan Spann. I'm going to fall to the ground. I'm just going to turtle up face down, completely flattened out. I'm not going to move at all, even though I'm not unconscious. And then maybe they'll give me that Tony Ferguson fight. I almost said Tony Green fight. But the Tony Ferguson fight. Embarrassing performance by Grant Dawson. And honestly, if he's losing to Bobby Green, I did not believe in Grant Dawson at all. And then after the performance he had against Demirs Magulov, I started to kind of believe in him a little bit. But he's getting KO'd by a jab from Bobby Green. Bobby Green's not even known for his power. He has finished some guys, but he's not known for his power by any means. Cut Grant Dawson from the organization immediately. Now, in terms of who might actually get cut on this list, Kat Zingano should retire or get cut from Bellator. Ricky Glenn's probably getting cut. Mendoza might get another opportunity. Montana De La Rosa probably getting cut. Johnny Munoz Jr. probably getting cut. And the other ones, Demopoulos and Murata, probably not. Alexander Hernandez, probably not. Bill Algeo, definitely not. He got a win there. So there's who I actually believe will get cut. But honestly, cut everyone on this list, in my opinion. Horrible performances all the way around. I never want to see any of these fighters ever fight again in terms of the actual list. Forget about the honorable mentions. In terms of the actual list, I don't want to see any of those fighters fight again. Let me know what you guys think of the list. Did I miss anyone who should have been on the list? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.